Michael Gagan is a political commentator. He joins us now from Victoria to talk some more about this. Michael, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
This is a recount of recounts. I mean, 9 votes to be separating the two. What are the chances that there is some discrepancy here, looking at past elections and recounts?
There certainly have been examples in the past where we've had close election results and it's subsequently been turned over. You know, the most infamous example in BC history was where Al Passeral, this is a couple decades ago, won by 1 vote. And it turns out his opponent, the NDP incumbent, had failed to vote for himself, as had his wife.
Wow.
So it's an example where, you know, every vote literally counts. So, you know, if the Liberals aren't able to put Comox into the win category, then, you know, it looks like we're going to be in a minority government situation, which is, you know, the first time we've had to deal with this in 65 years.
So they're not just looking at a recount, they're also looking again at the absentee ballots. What's the point of doing that?
Well, you know, given how close the election results are, and, you know, obviously Courtney Comox was the closest riding, but there are, you know, the Vancouver Fraserview has been accepted for recount, and there's lots of other ridings that were, you know, within a few hundred votes going one way or the other. So, you know, you've got, I think, almost 180,000 absentee ballots. So it'll be very interesting to see whether or not that changes anything. If people vote proportionally the way they did in the general election, then it won't change anything. But if there's a substantial number of absentee ballots that were either pro-Liberal or pro-NDP or Green, for that matter, we could see some other riding shifts.
Yeah, tell me about these ridings, if you can. Where do they fall traditionally, and have they changed in a way that maybe this time around we could see the vote going distinctly one way or the other?
Well, yeah, in terms of the absentee ballots, I don't know. I mean, to the extent that there's going to be more of them in the Lower Mainland, the Greater Vancouver area, you know, it's one of those situations where, let's say, people that were absentee balloting tended to be very strongly voting Liberal. Well, then that could undo the NDP in a couple of seats that they make gains in the Lower Mainland area. On the other hand, you saw the Greens picking up support on Vancouver Island. Maybe there's enough absentee ballots that, you know, could put one of their seats in jeopardy. I doubt it. I think at the end of the day, when all this counting is said and done, we're going to see at most 1 seat change hands, if any.
How do you think it will move ahead if there is a minority government for the Liberals? How difficult will it be for them to govern, to get anything passed?
It could be quite difficult if they're unable to come to a deal. It's interesting that Andrew Weaver's brought in Norm Spector, who was you know, a chief of staff both to Prime Minister Brian Mulroney as well as way back in the day Premier Bill Bennett back in the 1980s. He's brought him in to advise him in terms of this transition time. But yeah, if the Liberals are unable to have a workable majority, and, you know, presumably the House would be called to session sometime this fall, if they lose a confidence motion, then I suspect, given how close the results are, even if you have the Greens and the NDP pairing up, which isn't a given, the Greens have so far indicated they're more inclined to the Liberals than the NDP. But even in that scenario, they wouldn't really have a workable majority either. So I strongly suspect that the lieutenant governor, if the Liberals can't hold on to a confidence motion in the House, will throw it back to the electorate, and we'll be into a general election either this fall or perhaps this spring.
Wow, within 6 months of the first one. Thanks for that, Michael. But I'm sure BC residents don't want that to happen. We'll see what takes place when the coming days and the recount and results are announced. Michael Gagan, political commentator, joining us today. Thanks for that.
Thank you.